All animals, and us humans too, have three main motivational instincts that are embedded in us, both biologically, biochemically, and genetically, that help us to survive. Those motivational instincts are: we seek out pleasure, we seek to avoid pain, and we seek to conserve energy. So from a weight control management perspective, seeking out pleasure has more to do than anything else on how much energy is in a food that we eat, the density of the energy per weight. The fact that the food tastes good, it's palatable, and all those other factors runs a distant second to how important our internal body regards our eating behaviour. With regard to avoiding pain, when we get used to eating a certain amount of food and we like the sensations, then when we try and change those habits and we start suffering cravings and we start suffering a bit of discomfort until we can create a new habit, that's the pain avoidance aspect regarding weight control. And then finally, energy conservation. That's things like, is it worth your while to run down the shops, do the shopping, get some healthy food, come home, prepare the healthy food, then cook the healthy food and then sit down and eat it, compared with just ordering in a pizza. And for a lot of people, it's not worth the effort. And that's where energy conservation comes in as well. So they're the three things that drive our behaviour. Can we change that? Yes, we can, depending upon how well we understand it and also whether we're smart enough to bring in some strategies that will come into play so we don't have to compete against that. Some people don't know whether foods are addictive or not, so just a couple of studies. First one was called the milkshake study. It was done by Harvard University a couple of years ago. They had a group of students come through and drink milkshakes. One milkshake and the second milkshake, they were both identical. They were matched for weight, texture, taste, calorie level, and also macronutrient breakdown. Same amount of fats, carbs and proteins. The only difference that they did was that one of these milkshakes was sweetened using cane sugar and the other one was sweetened using cane starch, both from the same vegetable and both carbohydrates. They wanted to see if there was any effect on the brain centres of your brain that registers and controls addictive behaviour. The one that was sweetened with cane starch had no effect. It was just like eating any other food. The one that was sweetened by cane sugar, though, lit up those parts of your brain like a Christmas tree with regard to the addictive side of things, the dopamine release. And it didn't just light it up a lot, it lit it up to the same extent that mainstream addictive behaviours, things that smoking and alcohol and drugs can light them up for, which is a bit scary when you think about it, and that's been replicated a lot of times. The second study was a rat study. They got these rats and they fed them normal rat chow. They did that for a month, monitored their eating habits, how much they ate, all of those sort of things. Then for the next month, they gave them a highly dense, in terms of energy, rat chow. So it was high in fats and sugars. They matched it for the amount of total energy they were consuming compared with the previous month. So they didn't eat as much food because it was much richer in energy. And then after that month, they then put them back on to their normal rat diet. And the rats stopped eating for 14 days. Now we all know that rats like to eat on a ravenous basis. And that type of resistance to eating because they wanted certain foods so much is a nice way to demonstrate how strong that addictive pull can be. Now the last little study I want to share, this was again a mice study. They got these mice and they fed them a normal type of mouse food diet. And then the next month, they fed them a high energy dense diet, high in fats and sugars again. And then in the third month, they gave them the option. So they had two feeding stations, one with normal food, one with a highly dense energy food. And not unexpectedly, the mice preferred the high energy food. So what the researchers did was that they electrified the plate in front of the food counter. So when the mice would come through to feed, they would get an electric shock to see whether they could stop them eating that. It didn't. So what the researchers then did was they kept cranking up the electric shock each time the mouse would come along to try and force them into going to eat normal food again. And they had to stop the study when the electric shock became so extreme relative to humans that it wasn't sufficient and ethical in order to do that. So are foods addictive? Yes, they are. We need to think about that, and that's what we're going to discuss in the next little session. I've never seen anyone come along and simply wake up in the morning and start shoveling sugar down. You can tell people say that they've got a sweet tooth and whatever else. It's not the sugar, it's the food. And the biggest part of the food is how energy dense. I've got lots of friends who will wake up in the morning and shovel down biscuits and cakes and lollies and pizza and dairy products and all sorts of things that are highly energy dense. That's the problem, and we need to keep that in mind.